Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Well, I'm always excited when I get a new stamp set. The first thing I want to do, of course, is just pull out all of my inks and see what I can create. Well, I wanted to go ahead and work with this stamp set, which is called Dapper, to see if I could come up with some sort of a design for a masculine Valentine's Day card. Now, I know a lot of us struggle with the masculine cards, and I get it. But Tim Holtz has some great stamps that will kind of lead you into the direction of a masculine card, but you can still add the Valentine touch to it. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm going to be creating. Now, the end project, or the end product, I should say, it was just an insert for my little journal here. But certainly the design that I'm going to be sharing with you is something that you can obviously use for a topper, for a Valentine's Day card, or even use it as a small ATC card. And you'll get the idea when I get a little bit deeper into the video. So let me go ahead and jump right in and share with you what kind of a design I came up with using my new stamp set called Dapper. Now for this particular card, I took the easy way out, and I went ahead and I printed out a background using some of my vintage invoices in my shop. And I'll make sure that I link all of the products below that I use for this video. I have some really great vintage invoices from New York, and they really create some awesome backgrounds. And that's what I decided to use for my background. And then I decided to just embellish it a little bit more. A lot of times, if you don't know what you're going to be able to create for a background, some of these old invoices are just great starters. So I went ahead and I trimmed down my cardstock, and then I got some of my walnut stain, and I'm just edging up the edge of the cardstock so that way the white isn't showing. And again, when I am doing some sort of a vintage inspired card, I don't mind it being a little bit messy. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just using these finger daubers to add some ink to the edge. And then once I have that all inked up, I'm going to go ahead and just add my invoice to some craft cardstock. And that will be the base for my card. But before I actually do that, I wanted to go ahead and add some ink to my base, which is the craft cardstock. So I'm using some old paper, distress oxide, and then I believe I'm also going to be using some antique linen. And this is just to add a little bit of interest. I first started out using my brush, and I decided I wasn't getting enough coverage. And a lot of times I'll just pick up my ink pad and just take it right to the paper. And, you know, if you're not going for any particular design, if you're just looking to add some interest or some color, this is a really easy way to do that. So once I had the color on my cardstock, then I went ahead and I took my ATG gun and I attempted to adhere my invoices to my craft cardstock. But recently I haven't been real happy with the results that I get using my ATG gun. And I think it's not necessarily that it's not a good product, because I've used the ATG gun for years. But I have really grown accustomed to using my Beacon 3-in-1, which I've shared with you in some of my other videos. And honestly, I think it's the best glue ever. I don't know if I'll ever give that up, just because when I started using it, it just really is nice. It gives me room to actually, or I should say time to actually move my paper if I need to straighten it or add it somewhere else. Whereas when you're using the tape and the ATG gun, a lot of times once it's stuck to your paper, it's not going to go anywhere. Also, sometimes as you can see here, I have trouble with my tape getting stuck on my paper. And I know it's just a matter of making sure that my tape is in correctly. But I tend to be somewhat of an impatient crafter, so I really love the fact that when I add my liquid adhesive, I can still move my paper around, and I don't have any of the problems that I have with just the traditional tape. Now, one of the things that I really love about using printables is I can resize my images. So as you can see here, I'm using a bigger image here, and I'm adding it onto a let's see, it's 4 1/4 by 6 3/4. to create a 5x7 card. But then you're going to see here, I'm going to have a smaller piece, which is the exact same background. It's just sized down. And that's what I'm going to use to stamp my Dapper gentleman. And this is the stamp, of course, that has the hat along with the body. And the ink that I'm going to be using is the ink from scrapbook.com, and it really complemented this paper. So I was just overall happy with the results that I was able to get. Now, as you can see here, that tape did not stick down. So this is where I'm saying I'm tending to love my 3-in-1, because I ended up just pulling that out and saying to heck with the adhesive, and I added my liquid glue to my background, and then I know it wasn't going to go anywhere. Now, I know I could have easily just edited that out, but I wanted to show you some of the struggles I have, because, again, I want to kind of keep it real. I don't want to necessarily make you think that all of my crafting goes perfectly. Sometimes I do struggle with some of the products. And like I said, it's not that I don't like the ATG gun. It's just recently, since I've been using the 3-in-1 beacon, I just like it so much better. So that probably is going to be my go-to adhesive going forward. All right, so once I got past the problem with adhering my cardstock down, then I went ahead and I pulled out some washi tape. And as you can see, I am sticking with the brown tones because we are going to create a masculine card. And the washi tape serves as twofold here. It's going to give me some interest on the front of my cardstock, and then it's also going to help hold down the paper. Now, as you saw here, typically I will fold over the washi tape, but because I'm not going to actually turn this into a card, I'm going to turn it into an insert for my little journal. I wanted to keep the back washi tape free, I guess, so to say. But if you are going to put this on top of a 5x7 card or any type of cardstock, you could easily just fold your washi tape over, and it will just help secure your image that much more. Okay, so the ink that I'm going to be using, again, is from scrapbook.com, and this is called, I want to say dark chocolate, I believe. And I wasn't really sure if it was going to get lost in the background because, as you can see, some of those images are brown. But once I stamped it, I knew this was the perfect color for this card. It was brown, and it definitely matched the background, but it was dark enough that I was able to stand out. Okay, so let me go ahead and give you a couple of tips when you're using this stamp. This is a stamp set that I've been wanting for a while, and I finally got it. So I was really happy. There's just so many things that you can do with this little guy here, because you're going to have that space in the middle between the hat and the suit. But whenever you have rubber that doesn't have any images, ink can tend to get on that, and then it will it will go to your cardstock. So you have to be really careful when you have inks, or if you have rubber stamps that have big openings like this one here. So when you do ink your gentleman here, you may want to just get a rag or something and make sure that none of that ink has transferred onto the open space, which is right underneath the hat. Now, I chose to actually stamp these separately. So as you can see, I didn't put the ink on the hat and the suit at the same time. I'm focusing on the hat first just to make sure that I don't get any of that ink in the middle. And it seems that I got a really good impression, so I was really happy with the hat. And then I went ahead and I decided to work on the suit. And for the suit, while I didn't get any ink above the neck, I ended up getting some of the ink on the lines below, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. It kind of got the edge of the stamp, and so you want to make sure that when you are stamping that you do have some sort of a rag where you can wipe off the edges, just to make sure you don't get any of that ink transfer where you don't want it. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to fix that here in a minute. Now, sometimes when you get this excess ink from stamping, a lot of us just might decide to throw away the cardstock and start all over. But I wanted to intentionally leave it because I wanted to show you how you can easily cover up some of these mistakes. And honestly, I mean, even if you did leave the mistake on the card, I'm all about the grunge. I'm all about the imperfection, and I don't mind it so much. But this outline was a little bit too much even for me, so I wanted to go ahead and cover it up. So once I was happy with the stamping, minus the marks around the suit, then I went ahead and I took my ATC card, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere it to the base of my card. All right, now the background that I'm going to be stamping here are those same invoices that I used for the brown background, but I just changed the hue when I actually printed it out, and I left them colored. And as you can see, the invoices have all sorts of colors. They have blues and pinks and greens. And the pink area of the invoice was actually big enough where I can just punch a heart. And that's what I'm going to use to go where the face would typically go. And so while it's a masculine card, I still have the heart, which will certainly work for a Valentine. Okay, so once I figured exactly where I was going to put the heart, and as you can see, it fits perfectly. The neck collar has that V, so the bottom of the heart, it really fits. It really looks like it was meant to be. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some of my walnut stain to the edging of my ATC card, and then I'm going to adhere that to the base of the card, and then I'll add the heart. And then I'm going to go ahead and progress to show you how I'm going to correct some of those smudges. Now, there's actually a few ways that you can correct mistakes. You can certainly get some script or some smaller background stamps, and you can stamp over where the marks are, so that way it looked like you intentionally wanted to have some of those other markings. But I didn't want to do that on this particular card because I just thought it wouldn't look right. So this is where I decided to add some of my sentiment stickers and use some of the remnant rubs, because then I can cover up some of those ink splotches without it looking like I just intentionally added something to cover those up. It's going to be really vague. You're still going to be able to see some of those splotches, but it's going to be really vague, so it won't stand out. So the first thing that I did after I adhered my heart is I just pulled out the stickers, and I'm using the Tim Holtz metallic stickers, and I'm just going to find a sentiment that will work good for the bottom of the card. And as you're going to see here, I'm going to place the sticker right where at the bottom of the suit where some of those outlines kind of transferred, and that will cover up the bottom. But then we're still going to have to work with the outline on the left side of the suit, and we're going to be doing that with remnant rubs. Now, if you've never worked with remnant rubs before, those are really great to cover up background smudges. And some of the images are smaller, so you can easily add those where you might have little markings, and it really just looks like it's part of the remnant rub. So those are really great ways to actually cover up some of your mistakes. The remnant rub that I'm going to be using, I want to say, is called Numbers. I will find it for you, and I'll link it with some of the product below, so that way if this is something you want to try out, you'll have links to that. This is a really old set of remnant rubs. I've had them for a long time, and one of the reasons I am trying to use them up is because in Tim's new release coming up, he does have a new set of remnant rubs, and of course I'm going to invest in those because I like working with them. So I wanted to make sure I use up some of my old remnant rubs just to make room for some of my new stash. Now, I've seen some people actually just take the sheet of remnant rubs and place it over their cardstock and use their stylus to just transfer the image right to their cardstock. But I haven't had a lot of luck with that. Sometimes I get an extra image transferring onto my cardstock. So I find that if I just cut out the piece that I want to use and place it, it works a lot better for me. So after I was finished struggling with that metallic sticker, I went ahead and I moved on to my Remnant rubs. I have a real problem with getting things straight, and my husband has pointed that out to me many times. I was really trying to get my sticker straight, and then after the fact, I realized that my ATC card was actually a little bit off as well. But it's a homemade card, so I'm just going to go with it. And that's what I tell him, when it's a little bit crooked, is it's all about the journey, not necessarily about the end result. So as long as I enjoy creating the card and adding some of my creativity to it, if it's a little bit off center, then I just kind of roll with it. All right, so I knew, like I said, I was going to go ahead and use some of the smaller numbers to cover up some of those the ink that transferred around the suit. So again, I'm just cutting these out. I'm going to go ahead and add it right next to the suit where some of that ink transferred, and then you're not going to hardly be able to see any of the ink at all. And then once I decided to commit to the number theme, then I went ahead and I just added a few more numbers just to kind of make it a little bit more cohesive and to make it look like the numbers were intentional and not necessarily a cover-up. So I added the numbers at the top right corner, and then I decided that I wanted to actually add a number to the heart. And since I was kind of going towards a Valentine's Day card, I decided to use the number 1 and the number 4 right in the middle of the heart, and that really ties it for creating a Valentine's Day card. And just by adding that little pop of pink, like I said, it really transforms it. It's a very masculine card. You've got all of your brown tones, but just adding that little pop of pink really, in my opinion, finishes off the Valentine's Day card. So I'm going to go ahead and take that number 1 and the number 4, and those numbers are going to fit perfectly into my heart punch, and I'm going to add that right there. Now you could also, if you have some month stamps, there's room on the top to add the word February. That would be really nice as well. You can add Valentine, which would be nice also. But I decided to go ahead and just stick with the masculine theme. And I'm going to be using another one of the stamps from the Dapper stamp set to add to the top. And I'll be showing you that in just a moment here. Okay, so again, using my stylus, I'm going to go ahead and rub these numbers onto the heart, and then we're going to go ahead and take one of the invoice stamps from the Dapper set, and we're going to add it to that white space right on the top. Now, truth be told, I don't make very many Valentine's Day cards. I will typically make one for my son and I'll send it to him, but I don't give them so much to my husband. Honestly, he sees most of the cards that I make because he's kind of my quality assurance, and he's the one that always tells me that my cards are crooked, but he's already seen this, so it's not going to be a Valentine's Day card for him. So I did decide to actually turn it into a note card insert for one of my journals because it was just a little bit more practical. But I certainly wanted to go ahead and show you how you could use this topper not only for a card, but if you wanted to turn it into a note card insert for one of your journals, you could do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I ended up doing with it. So after I had my number 14 adhered, then I went ahead and got out my MISTI because, like I said, I am going to add part of an invoice to the very top, well, not the very top, right above the top hat, because there was some white space there. So, like I said, I am using my MISTI just to make sure I get a nice crisp image. And this stamp I wasn't too worried about because there isn't a lot of white space like there was with the top hat and the suit. So I was pretty confident that I wouldn't have any problems with the stamping. For the most part, Stampers Anonymous stamps are the deep etched rubber stamp, and I really like them because, again, they are really deep as far as the molding for the stamp, and I typically will get a really good impression. The only time I have to worry about, like I said, is when there is a lot of the rubber showing, because your ink can easily get onto that rubber and transfer onto your paper. So I ended up going back and forth with which invoice stamp I was going to use, and ultimately I did decide on the Painter's Color Supply. It was a bit smaller, and I thought it fit on the cardstock a little bit better. And then for the bottom of the stamp, there was another stamp in the set that fit perfectly on the bottom, so I decided to stamp that as well. When you're working on a background, like I said, I started out with a background that already had invoices, but don't be afraid to add to it, especially if you have some contrasting color. This brown that I'm using from scrapbook.com was the perfect contrast, so it was really nice to be able to add a few more visual elements to the background, and it really made it stand out. All right, and then at this point, if you decided to actually create a card, then of course you would just add this finished piece onto some white cardstock, and your Valentine card is ready to go. All you need to do is finish off the inside and add your sentiment. But like I said, I am going to go ahead and show you what I ended up doing with this piece. And this is just a journal card that I created to go inside of a mini journal that I had. So once I was finished stamping the Painter's Color Supply sign on top of my cardstock, then I decided to work on the backside. Now I ended up getting some darker brown cardstock, and I just matted the backside, and then I found some lined white paper to add for journaling. But the white paper that I'm using, as you're going to see in just a minute here, was just a little bit too white for me. So after I had used my 3-in-1 Beacons glue to adhere my cardstock, I decided to actually grunge it up just a little bit more, just to have it be a little bit more cohesive with the front. Now this is just going to be a journal card. It's going to fit right into my mini journal that I showed you at the beginning of the video. And it's just something that you can pull out, write a little note, something just to go into your journal. So to grunge it up just a bit, I did end up taking my antique linen and I just smeared it all over the white cardstock. Didn't really have any rhyme or reason. I didn't want it to be completely covered. I just wanted it to look aged. So I'm using the leftover ink on this little dauber just to go around the edges. And then I decided I needed a little bit more. And this is where I actually took the ink pad and just kind of went to town. And it was a real light touch. I didn't press down too hard because I still wanted the white to show through. I just wanted the paper to be aged. And then I still thought that it needed one more thing, and this is where I came in with the stamp. So I hope that you've enjoyed my video today, sharing with you just an idea for a masculine Valentine Day card. Like I said, this Dapper stamp set had been on my wish list for quite some time, so I was really happy that I was finally able to get it. I think there's so many possibilities with this stamp set, from Valentine's Day to Easter to just your overall masculine cards. So I think I'm going to have a lot of fun working with this stamp set. So as always, I'll leave a list of all the products that I've used to create the little card along with the links to the stores. And if you've enjoyed my video, I would sure appreciate a thumbs up. I'll also leave a link to my shop where I have all of those vintage invoices that I used to create my background. I do have it on sale for a couple more days. I think I have it on sale to the end of the month for 40% off. So if this is something that you're interested in, or if you like working with vintage invoices, this is a good value for you. Now, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget you're going to want to hit that subscribe button before you head out, so that way you will be notified when I do have all of my sales. This 40% off sale has been going on for a couple days, so I wanted to make sure I got a video up for you guys to share this sale with you on the vintage invoices. All right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.